Both the good and the bad of having an exclusive license surfaces in this new MMA game by EA Sports, whose overall offering still lacks depth. My name is Paulo, and this is our video review for EA Sports UFC 4. The relationship between EA and mixed martial arts, MMA, is unconventional and without precedent, since its first dedicated foray into this popular sport is still the best they've made so far, and it seems that it will continue to be so. We're of course talking about EA Sports MMA, which without the UFC license, the most popular MMA promotion, was able to captivate fans of the sport with its innovative playability and global perspective of the sport. The career mode in EA Sports MMA, released for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, offered us the true path to becoming a warrior. We traveled the world to train with specialists in the different arts, and we could compete in leagues that had their own rule sets, like Malditos in Brazil or Pride FC in Japan. We could go to Thailand to learn Muay Thai, or stay in Brazil to earn our black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. While some aspects were quite archetypical, the release was able to represent the sport and also show it from a cultural perspective. It's clear that the success of EA Sports MMA was the bullet point on their resume that allowed them to close the highly sought-after deal with the UFC, which for years had been married to the UK's THQ duo. The UFC had been needing a breath of fresh air for some time, as was stated by the controversial president of the UFC, Dana White, when the exclusivity contract between Electric Arts and the UFC was announced. To some degree, this was the situation that fans, followers of the sport, and companies alike dreamed of. But 4 releases later, it's clear that the official license is also limiting, to a point that the series has stagnated once again. EA Sports no longer takes risks like it did with the old MMA, which one guesses has to do with the stringent limits on creative control. This heavily impacts the possible game modes and the general structure of each release in the series. This 4th title is no exception. One of the main promises of EA Sports UFC 4 is a new career mode as a central part of the experience. While it does have some interesting design choices from a narrative standpoint, it's no different to what we already know. Training schedule, main fight, coming up through the amateur ranks to arrive at the UFC. There are no decisions to be made. Nothing that adds vibrancy and passion, even less so. A broad social media presence is added, with interaction with other fighters, but it never really goes anywhere. Apart from this, we have the same 3 formats we're used to: regular fights, knockout, and submission tournaments, and an online mode that offers a chance of competing for a variety of titles, just like the online belt progression in EA Sports MMA. At first, it seems like the possibilities are ample, but we're quickly left feeling that there's not much to do. Where we can enjoy ourselves, however, is in the octagon. In this regard, EA Sports UFC 4 is without a doubt the best in the series when we have a controller in hand. The development team went over each and every established element and mechanic, removing those that didn't work and improving the ones that did. The results are felt from the first bout. Combat feels organic and highly dynamic. The animations are smooth, there's localized damage, and the body is affected based on the fight and the jiu-jitsu grappling. The physics are simply fantastic. Almost all unnatural reactions of the bodies and caused by impacts have been eliminated. Bodies crashing together feel as they should. Playing the game is truly enjoyable, and there are so many options that affect each fight that every bout provides a completely new strategy. The strikes sound and look natural and correspond to the appearance of the striker to such a degree that each fighter actually feels different. In this way, EA Sports UFC 4 brings back the thrill of the fight, as well as the unpredictability factor that is such a feature of the sport. The fact that everything looks good visually certainly helps. The representation of the fighters is accurate to the real-world counterparts, including the entrances to the octagon, gestures of defiance, and striking techniques that set them apart. The same holds true for the venues, which include typical places like Madison Square Garden, for example, where Dana White Contender Series takes place. We have other remarkable options like the backyard, a fenced-in area where the mythical Kimbo Slice became known. We can choose Kimbo as a fighter, and the bizarre Q-Mite, Great White Dragon style, which even has an 80s synth soundtrack and adds a Mortal Kombat style commentary. These choices are bizarre. It's also surprising that they add these venues while leaving out others, like Pride. It almost feels strange that they give a nod to backyard street fights when it's a product focused on the MMA promotion that has undoubtedly done the most to legitimize the sport, and also do so at the Olympic level. The irregular roster of fighters is also cause for some raised eyebrows. We see people like Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate, both retired, instead of active first-rate fighters like Amanda Ibas. Some, like Conor McGregor, aren't in the correct weight class, and promising up-and-comers like Jeff Neal or Vicente Luque are notably missing. In their place, we have fighters who've gone on to other promotions, like Lyoto Machida and Chael Sonnen, and more classic ones like Wanderlei Silva and Chuck Liddell. Since EA Sports UFC 4 has a carefully presented broadcast due to the ESPN deal, it's at least disappointing that the fighters aren't exactly the same ones that make up each weight class. It's clear that the decision to include more interesting fighters or legends of the sport has to do with targeting the release towards a more general public, which recognizes the UFC and its more visible characters by the highly renowned athletes from a few decades ago. Unfortunately, this does little but dilute the athletic aspect that the series once aspired to meet, as if the nod towards illegal fights with the addition of Backyard as an alternative venue was not enough. The fact is that the UFC as an organization is at a strange moment in its history, lacking standout stars with a general management known for mistreatment and controversy, a place where behavioral codes seem non-existent. EA Sports UFC 4 reflects those shortfalls because it doesn't show any regard towards the sport, its legacy, or what it represents, in spite of that fact that our conduct is one of the elements that supposedly defines our destiny in career mode. What we're left with is then a game that performs better than any other within the octagon, but severely lacks a backdrop to everything surrounding it, both due to the scarcity of game modes as well as the ways it misrepresents a sport that is still fighting for its legitimacy today. It's because of all of this that the judges' scorecards come back with 7 points for EA Sports UFC 4. The best it has to offer us happens within the octagon, thanks to its refreshed playability and new techniques that make the clinch and fight something highly enjoyable. Unfortunately, the other aspects of this game aren't up to the same standard. If you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications. Follow us on social media and visit www.malditosnerds.com to stay up to date with the latest video game news. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.